Right, this is the answers to January 2008. Can you do me a massive favour? This is going to take me absolutely ages. Don't get to about question number 4 and think, I can't be bothered. Keep on going through all of them and only finish a question when you're absolutely certain you know why the answer was right. Okay, so here's the first one. It says there is an output gap when. Now, just if anyone's sitting there thinking, I don't know what an output gap is, can you remember this diagram? It's a diagram where real GDP is at the top. It's the only time real GDP goes up there. And you have time here. And you have the trend rate. This is the amount which the country is expected to grow for. So, for example, the trend rate might be 2.5% a year, increase in growth. And this is the curvy one around it, is the actual rate. So this is how much the country is actually growing by. Now, the answer, by the way, if anyone just wants to flick past if they know the answer, is D. Right, but I'm going to explain why first of all. So, just between here and here, you could call this I'll do a different colour, you could call it a negative output gap, because the country is growing slower than was expected, and the other one you can call a positive output gap, because it's growing faster than it was expected. Down here, you're likely to see unemployment. Up here, you're likely to see things like inflation, because there's going to be too much demand and not enough supply. Anyway, so there's an output gap when A, productivity is higher than in one country than the other. That's just stupid. B, the economy is continuously producing more capital goods and consumer goods over a period of time. Again, that doesn't make any sense. If they did that, that would actually make the PPF shift outwards, but it's irrelevant, so it's wrong. And C, unemployment occurs because the rate of economic growth increases above its trend rate of growth. C is the only one which kind of looks like it's going to make sense, but actually if you look at it, it says unemployment occurs because the rate of growth increases above. That's stupid, because when the economic growth increases, there'd be no unemployment. It'd be good for employment. So the only answer can be D, and this is where national output is higher or lower than it would have been if the country had grown at its trend rate of growth. Okay, so that's the first one. Right, this is a nice easy one, but just to set the scene early on, it's talking about inflation, so you need to know there's two causes of inflation. There is demand pull and cost push. If you know those two things, then you can answer the question. If you don't know those two things, go and revise them. So, if there's an increase in... Now, let's go through each of these answers and say whether right or wrong. Just so you know, the answer is A. But if there was, it's saying lower inflation, so that's what it's asking about. If there was an increase in productivity, why would inflation go down? Because if you look at the diagram, if firms become more productive, then they will... Let's have a look. I've forgotten how to draw a diagram. Don't go away. What the hell am I doing there? Okay, so it's going to look like this. Short one AS. AD. So if a firm becomes more productive, that means their SRAS will go this way because workers are producing more stuff, which, as you can see, will put down the price level. This is because there's going to be a reduction in cost push inflation. So that is going to be, the answer is A. Now, just to make sure we know why the other ones are wrong, all of these things, A, B, C and D, they all will increase AD. Sorry, B, C and D will all increase AD. So this is, when they increase AD, as you can see, AD will go from here to here. This will cause the price level to go up. So it can't be those answers. So that's why it is A. Right, this is a really important question, and I think it's easy, but you have to know a few things. So, investment is spending on capital goods by firms, and it's saying which of these following four things are going to cause an increase in investment. So, let's go through each one. If there was an increase in the value of a country's currency, what would you write? You'd write spiced. Imports cheap, exports dear. Now you can see, if exports are dear, that means firms won't be able to sell much abroad, so therefore they're going to be working below their capacity, so they've got no need to invest. So it can't be A. Right, next, aggregate demand in the economy. this is the right answer. B is the right answer. And the reason is, if there is more demand in the economy, look at this diagram, if demand's gone from AD here to AD here, what's likely to happen to a firm? What's that? Oh, whoops, sorry. Right, as you can see, the firm is likely to be on its, here, it's on its productive capacity. That means it can't produce any more. So the only way they can keep up with demand is to invest more. And this is called the accelerate, I think that's how you spell it, accelerator effect. And that's the whole point of that accelerator effect. If there's too much demand in the economy, firms are going to have to invest to try and keep up with it. So the answer is B. Let's go through the other ones just to show why they're wrong. An increase in the level of unemployment means that people won't be spending anything, so there's no reason for firms to invest. And finally, if there's loads of spare capacity in the economy, again, there's no need to invest because you've already got spare capacity. So the answer is B. Right guys, so I'm going to let you in on a secret. I actually had to call my mum about this one. Really wasn't sure. Because if you look at this question, you think, Christ, what are they talking about? They're going for so much stuff. But basically, if you look at the information, it's saying there's been a 40% increase in oil prices, and there is going to be economic growth of 3.5%. Now, oil prices is going to change a firm's cost of production. So you know it's going to cause, if it was going to cause any sort of inflation, it would cause cost push. Right? And there's one little bit in here that tries to confuse you, and it's this line where it says, has only had a very limited effect on inflation. But even though it's only been very limited, it's still going to have some effect. So, let's go through the answers. Has the oil crisis caused inflation due to growth in productive capacity? No, because that's stupid. Because an increase in productive capacity would make prices go down. So we know that's wrong. B, both negative economic growth and inflation. Now, it might have caused some inflation, but it can't have caused negative economic growth, because here it says that the economies grew by 3.5%, so it can't be that. C, inflation due to excess aggregate demand. There's nothing on here that talks about there being too much demand in the economy, so that doesn't make any sense. And finally, inflation due to rising costs. This is the only one that could possibly make any sense, because it's got a thing about it saying a 40% increase in oil prices. So if you were to draw the diagram, whenever oil prices increase, it's going to affect a firm's cost of production, causing cost push inflation. So I put SRAS 1 AD, and it's going to cause the SRAS diagram to go to the left because firms' costs have gone up, and this should cause, as you can see, it should cause prices to go up, so inflation. And that is the answer. Right, these are the index numbers we've done before, and see whether you know the answer or not with this. These are the ones that can confuse a lot of people, so don't panic if you don't know it. Like, you remember, with index numbers, 100 is like the base year, and the reason why they have, they make a base year of like 2003. They say at 2003 we'll make prices at 100 and GDP at 100. So the reason why they do it is to make it easier to compare two different things. Right, so what can we tell from this data? This bit is GDP, and this bit is the price index, which is basically talking about whether prices are going up or down. So basically, it's talking about inflation. Now, a really important thing you need to know as well is that, I'll change colour because I can't really read that red, is real GDP is GDP with inflation taken into account. So to be able to find out real GDP, you need to know the GDP changes and you need to know inflation changes. This will show you the GDP changes, this shows the inflation. So we already know D is rubbish because you can calculate it from the data. Right, now I'm going to go a bit complicated here, like stay with me if you want. I want to find out how much GDP has gone up by, and then I also want to know how much prices have gone up by, because then I can tell whether GDP has gone up by more than or less than 50% or just 50%. So, GDP has gone up by 50 according to that thing, because the difference between these two numbers is 50, and it started off at 80, so I've done difference over the original times by 100 to find out how much it's gone by, and it is, what's that, 50 divided by 80 times by 100 and that means it's got, oops, sorry, I didn't want that at all. Yeah, I did. 50 divided by 80 times by 100 means GDP's gone up by, I can't do maths, I think it says 62%. I'll just check that again, because I don't trust myself. Yeah, 62.5%, so that's the first one. Right. That means, at the minute, lots of people will be saying it's gone up by more than 50%. But what have we not taken into account yet? We haven't taken into account the price increases. And the difference between the two prices is prices have gone up by 30, and they started off at 85. If I do times by 100, that means prices have gone up by, and I'll just put this into my calculator. You can do the same. Prices have gone up by about 35%. So, real GDP is both the GDP and the prices taken into account. So actually, in real terms, GDP's only gone up by maybe about, what's that? 62.5 take away 35. So GDP's actually only gone up by about 20. Real GDP, sorry, has only gone up by about 27%, which means we know it's less than 50%. So the answer is A. Now, not everyone's going to like what I just said there, but I'm sorry, that's how it is. Right, I'm so confident in this one, I haven't even looked at it yet. Whenever you see these ones, the only thing that will screw you up is looking at this. AD, which rubbish colour, AD has gone down. So do not start thinking about AD going up, it's clearly gone down, it's gone this way. Left is less. Okay, so, which ones are the most likely to cause AD to go down? Is an increase in the level of saving going to make AD go down? Yes, because if they're saving more, what they're not doing, they're not spending. So that makes sense. An increase in real incomes would make AD go to the right, so that's wrong. An increase in unemployment benefits means people have more money, so AD would go to the right, so it's wrong. And finally, if there's more credit available, then more people can spend, so AD would go to the right. So the answer is A. For those of you who have revised, this is too easy, this one. Multiplier effect is when there's been an increase in government expenditure, it says here. But you know, instead of saying government expenditure, they could say any part of AD, which is C plus I plus G plus X minus M. So, just because they say government expenditure, it doesn't matter, they could have said any of them. Anyway, it always leads to a larger change in, and it's national income. It's always going to be national income. So that's the answer. Okay, this one's really easy, but they kind of confuse you by having things in there that potentially you could see how they could be right. But just go for the one which is obviously right. Just cross out first of all. If government policies succeed in raising the level of investment in the economy, then, so if there's more investment in the economy, then future productive capacity will be affected, because more investment will lead to our productive capacity shifting outwards. Some people might put B, but it's saying the PPF will shift inwards, which is the wrong way. I don't really understand why they've got A and C there. Oh, anyway, C, trend rate, the economy will fall, that's rubbish, the trend rate will go up. And A is just irrelevant, so the answer is D. Right, this answer is really easy, but they've just written it horribly. But anyway, let's go through it quickly. If there was an increase in the deficit on the current account, this means we're importing more than we're exporting, which means AD would go down, which means this one is wrong. B, if people are saving more, what are they not doing? They're not spending. And if they're not spending, then again, AD would go down. So it's that's wrong. If the government had a bigger budget surplus, that means they've got more money, which means they're not spending. And then D, the ratio of household consumption to national income. Basically, if household consumption increases compared to national income, then AD will go up. It's just a posh way of saying if household consumption went up. So the answer is D. But I know a lot of you will look at this one and think, oh, I don't even want to do it, don't care. But actually, it's really, really easy, and you can get this by crossing off the ones which are stupid. So we've got some information there. It's saying components of aggregate demand. They haven't done index numbers here. These are actually the amount of billions for each one. And this is saying how much they've changed by. So that's the amount of billions, this is how much they've changed by. Let's go through the ones which are definitely wrong. It says, gross fixing investment was the greatest component of AD in 2007. This is obviously stupid, because I didn't mean to cross that out. I meant to cross this out. Anyway, it's obviously stupid because gross fixed investment is not the biggest one. because there's loads of other ones which are bigger. Now, the increase in the value of components of AD between 2007 and 2008, 2006 and 2007 was due to inflation. There's nothing on here that talks about inflation in any way, so there's no way of knowing whether that's right or wrong. It could be to do with anything. So that's definitely wrong. C, the economy has a balance of payments surplus on its current account. As you can see, exports are less than imports, so it's got a deficit, so you can cross that out. And then finally, the answer is D. And the reason why it's D is, if you actually add it all together, AD, which is C plus I plus plus G plus X minus M. If you actually do all those calculations, I think it adds up to about 800. So if that is 800, the whole of it together, and consumption's about 500. 524. That's 500 is basically pretty much 2/3 of 800. So it's right. So that's the answer. It's D. But you could, even if you didn't want to do the calculations, you could work out the other ones were definitely wrong. So quickly you could realise it had to be D anyway. And also, just as a little side, consumption is always, C is almost always 60% of AD anyway. Right, these are the sort of ones you can just gain time on because they're so easy. So first of all, make sure you got the right shift. You can see that's going left, so you know something's going wrong to make the cost of production for a firm go up. So it's going to have to be something, one of these things that's going to cause the cost of production for a firm to go up. Is A going to be right, savings? No, that's stupid. That's going to affect demands. It's got irrelevant. If there's an increase in wage rates, B, that is right. Because if wage rates go up, a firm's cost of production goes up, so their short-run aggregate supply curve goes to the left, and it would cause cost-push inflation. Just to make sure the other ones are wrong. Employment, rubbish. It's got irrelevant. And then D, the exchange rate, again, irrelevant. All the three things that were irrelevant, all were factors that affected AD. So it's quite easily going to be B. Just to go a little more complicated if you want to, an increase in the exchange rate would be spiced, and this would make imports become cheap. And if imports become cheap, that would probably make a firm's SRAS go to the right because they might get their raw materials from abroad. But that's going a bit big. Anyway. Right, we laugh at these sort of questions. They're so easy that if you can't do this one, I'm quitting teaching. Because fiscal policy is to do with G&T, government spending and taxation. So on here they're going to either put on monetary stuff or fiscal stuff, and you've got to work out what the difference is between monetary and fiscal policy. So, which of the following could be classified as a fiscal policy? A decision to increase its budget deficit. That's definitely already right, because that's to do with fiscal policy, so it's G&T. B, a decrease in the exchange rate. That is one part of monetary policy. You don't actually need to know anything about that until A2, but as long as that's part of monetary policy. Reduce in the growth of the money supply, again, that is monetary, because it is. And finally, interest rates, that is monetary again. All those three are monetary, so it has to be A. It's too easy. On to the next one. Okay, this thing they're just trying to scare you. So let's just go through what look at the actual question and look at what they're actually saying. So there's going to be an increase in interest rates. When interest rates go up, that means AD goes down. So that's easy, because people spend less on credit, they save more, and their mortgage interest repayments go up. So AD is going down. And then you've got exchange rate is rising. So when the exchange rate is rising, you write spiced, which the person before has done this before anyway on this paper. When you write spiced, if exports are dear, what's going to be happening to aggregate demand? AD is going to be going down again, because our exports won't be competitive, so no one will be buying them. So both these things, AD going down. So really the question says, what's the consequence of AD going down? That's basically what it is. It's likely to be an increase in. If AD goes down, obviously there'll be more unemployed people. So the answer is A. The rest of them is rubbish. There's no point even looking at them. If there's a reduction in AD, of course unemployment will go up. Just in case anyone has actually answered the other ones, B, aggregate supply. It's good. I can't really work out how that could ever be the answer. So it's rubbish. A current account surplus. As you can see over here, if AD is going down, it's going to make our current account become a deficit. So it's rubbish. And then An increase in aggregate demand, of course that's wrong because both the things have shown aggregate demand to go down. Okay, this is actually a really easy question, but they just dressed it up to make it look scary. It says the MPC, Monetary Policy Committee, is most likely to increase interest rates if. Now you know, the reason why they increase interest rates is when there's too much inflation. That's basically the reason why it does it. So, the answer is going to be the one which is where there's inflation. Let's just go through them all. Whenever it says the exchange rate is high, what do? You write spiced. Now, looking at that one, is spiced, is that going to cause any inflation? No, it's not, because if imports are cheap, inflation is probably going to be going down anyway, because the firm's costs will be going down. And also, if exports are dear, AD will be going down, so it will cause a reduction in demand pull inflation. So either way, that's wrong. B, if the rate of growth of money wages is below the rate of growth of productivity, basically, if money wages are going down, that means firms will be able to produce more stuff, so that would actually cause a reduction in cost push inflation. So that's stupid. C, if employment is falling, normally that means that AD is going down because there's more unemployed people, so that's not going to cause any inflation. Then D, the answer is the rate of growth of GDP is above the long-term trend rate of growth in the economy. Now, looking at this diagram with real GDP up here and time down here, the point they're talking about is up here when there is a positive output gap. And whenever there's a positive output gap, when the rate of GDP growth is above the long-term trend rate, there's almost always inflation because the economy is growing way too fast, there's too much demand, and supply can't keep up. So the answer is D. Right, for those of you who are still listening, we're on to number 15. I don't know why it is, but I always think the last question is really easy. I don't know why they do that. What we've got is AD going to the right, and basically they're saying, what could have caused AD to go to the right? So this is just too easy. You know this is stupid because supply side policies would cause AS to go outwards, so it can't be that. An increase in the government's budget surplus. If the government has got a surplus, they're not spending anything, so it can't be B. C, an expansionary monetary policy. That's definitely it, because an expansionary monetary policy would make AD go up. And monetary policy, remember, is changes in the interest rates, the exchange rate, or the money supply. And find an increase in the current account deficit. That's stupid because that means exports are more than imports. That would make AD go down. So the answer is C.